A wave of sexual harassment allegations made its way through Capitol Hill. The House has moved forward on a measure mandating anti-harassment training for all members and staff. Here's Chief Congressional Correspondent Nancy Cordes.
Democrat John Conyers was holed up in Detroit today after leaving D.C. in the middle of the work week.
He is at home with his family. They are discussing the allegations.
Colleagues of Conyers in the Congressional Black Caucus say it's not their place to urge the veteran lawmaker to resign over claims that he propositioned staffers.
We think that is a decision for he and his family and his constituents to make.
The House did vote today to belatedly require anti-harassment training for members and their aides.
And the resolution is agreed to.
There's also a bipartisan push to prevent lawmakers from using government funds to settle with accusers, as Conyers did. Florida Republican Ron DeSantis.
If you're somebody is in power, you can misbehave. The taxpayer will bail you out.
House Speaker Paul Ryan said even he isn't informed when members pay off victims.
Does leading by example on sexual harassment mean Congress should say more about the women who have accused President Trump of misconduct?
Right now, we're focused on making sure this place works the right way.
But some female lawmakers, like New York's Kathleen Rice, have begun to ask why elected officials aren't being drummed out like their private sector counterparts.
You see the actions that CBS, NBC take when there are allegations against very well-known men in positions of power, and we don't do the same, and I think it's a disgrace.
Other members argue that the accused deserve due process and an ethics investigation. Plus, Elaine, they argue it's the voters who hired them, and those same voters should be the ones to fire them as well.
Well, Nancy, House Speaker Paul Ryan says anti-harassment training is, quote, just a first step. So where does Congress go from here?
Well, the question is going to be how aggressive do they want to get at overhauling these very antiquated rules that govern the investigation of sexual harassment and how women are treated when they come forward. You know, for decades now, officials here on Capitol Hill, the experts in this area, have been urging Congress to, at the very least, mandate harassment training. And Congress, for decades, inexplicably, basically turned a blind eye to it. Now they are voting to do just that. But there's this other bill that was brought forward by a couple of Democrats, a couple of Republicans, that would also say if you are accused of sexual harassment and you settle with an accuser, A, you can't use taxpayer money to settle with them. B, you can't keep it a secret. And they actually want to inject some transparency into the system going back to 1995. And that would be fascinating because the speaker said today, and this was really eye-opening, Elaine, that even he doesn't know who's been accused, whether they have agreed to a settlement, and how large that settlement is. Lawmakers don't even know. You know, there's this huge pot that a lot of them were surprised to learn is basically used to pay out settlements to Capitol Hill victims for all kinds of things, not just sexual harassment or sexual misconduct, but even being exposed to asbestos. And we know that millions of dollars have been paid out since the mid-90s, but we have no idea, and nor do members of Congress, how many of those settlements had to do with sexual misconduct. They're trying to gather that information now. The fact that that kind of information isn't easily accessible is a sign of just how stunningly Byzantine the system has been for reporting and correcting misconduct when it happens.
Yeah, it really is remarkable to hear that. Well, meanwhile, the Senate, Nancy, voted straight along party lines to start debate on the GOP tax reform bill. What hurdles remain for the Republican tax plan? And is the president's Christmas deadline still realistic?
It's possible. Right now, what's going to happen is, first of all, if and when they do begin voting on amendments to the bill, which would happen first before you'd have a final up or down vote on the GOP tax plan in the Senate, members are allowed to introduce unlimited amendments. So even if that process goes smoothly, it could last several days. The other big wild card here is that Republican leaders have been working furiously to try to address the concerns of about 10 or so Senate Republicans who don't like the bill in its current form. And some of those Republicans have been saying over the past couple of days their concerns are being addressed, and they believe they're going to be on board at the end of the day. But Senate Republican leaders can't hold a final vote until they know all but 2 of those Republicans are satisfied and they're going to vote yes. And part of what will affect their decision is how this amendment process goes over the next couple of days. If amendments get adopted that they don't like, that could set the vote tally back, or if they hold a vote on an amendment that is sort of a deal clincher for 1 or more Senate Republicans, that'll make the GOP's job a lot easier. So the process is trending in a direction that Republican leaders like, but it's too soon to say that they've got this in the bag. And then don't forget, even once they do pass the Senate bill, they've got to reconcile it with a very different House tax plan, and then both the House and the Senate would have to vote on that new plan before Christmas to meet the president's deadline. And we're talking about less than 15 legislative days left before that December 21st deadline.
Yeah, not a lot of time left.
Rather.
Yeah, not a lot of time left to clear all those hurdles. Nancy Cordes on Capitol Hill for us. Nancy, thank you.
You're welcome.